Hey everybody, it's Lon Seidman and welcome to lon.tv/extras, my extras channel. And what we're going to be doing today is a long one because I'm going to finally build that low-cost Intel PC we've been talking about since August. And what we're going to do is build it on this Alpha Black Acrylic ATX bench case from DIY PC. And it will be an open-air computer because we'll be eventually swapping out a lot of different components. So the plan here is to build this i3 computer. I'm going to do a video that will compare it to the AMD computer that we built not too long ago because they are about, or will be about the same price when you get all the components put together for it. So we'll be able to do a nice apples-to-apples comparison of AMD versus Intel in around the $300 or so price tag. And then after that, I've got a stack of GPUs, NVIDIA GPUs, that came in from PNY, a 1050i, I believe, I gotta look for them over there, a 1050i, a 1060, and a 1070. So we'll be able to test all of those GPUs on this exact same hardware and see what the incremental performance benefits are of those. So that'll probably be a separate video from that. So we're gonna have one video on the test bench, this build video, which you're watching now. We're gonna have another video on the actual Intel hardware performance on its own, and then we'll do a video on the incremental GPU performance as we put all of this stuff together. Now, I want to show you the components we are going to be using today, and I will also give you the appropriate disclaimers at the time that I introduce them to you. So the first thing is something I bought. This is an Intel Core i3 processor. This is, I think, a dual-core chip. It is the i3-6100. It was the least expensive one I could find at the time that I bought it, and it will be good enough, I think, for what we're putting together here. Again, a low-cost gaming PC. So this is something I bought with my own funds from Newegg. I'll put a link to it down below in the video description. We also have here the MSI motherboard. This is an H1110M Pro D. And I think I paid about $55 or $60 for this. I'll put a link to the actual cost of all these components in there so you can get a good idea of exactly what I'm talking about here. So this is the motherboard. Again, a very basic motherboard, but it does have that PCI X16 slot on there so we can put in the GPUs later. So we'll be adding that to the mix here. For a power supply, I've got a Corsair one. This is actually fancier than I would suggest you put into this, but I got this in through the Amazon Vine program a while back. This is their RM750i. So this is kind of overkill for what we're building here today. I hope it actually fits on this case that we're putting together. But it should obviously work for what we're doing. But I think you could probably get a case and a motherboard together for about $100. I'm sorry, a case and a power supply together for about $100. That should achieve the goal here of getting this PC at or near $300, $350. So we'll be mounting this thing. I think it goes in like so there. So we'll be taking a look at that. Again, this came in free of charge through the Amazon Vine program. And for RAM, we've got these modules from G-Skill. This is their Ripjaws 4 high-performance DDR4 memory. I love the branding on this stuff. So we got some nice big heat spreaders on here. These are DDR4 modules, 4 gigabytes each. We're going to install them in a dual-channel configuration. When you're building a PC, especially one that you intend to do for gaming, you always want to get matched pairs because the computer runs faster when you install the RAM in pairs versus having a single module. And this is what the back of it looks like here, so you can get the right part number. And I will, again, put links to all this down below. I think this was $38 for these two 4 gig modules to bring us up to 8. So you kids don't realize how good you have it these days. And then I've got an SSD here. This is a PNY SSD. This is 240 gigabytes, and this was provided to the channel free of charge from PNY. Now, my usual disclaimers here apply, so all the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody's paying for this review, and no one is reviewing this content before it is posted. We do have a mix of things that were sent to the channel and, of course, things that I bought. In fact, most of the things you'll see today are things that I purchased. So what I'm going to do now is just get myself organized a little bit, and then we will begin the build, starting with the motherboard. All right, so for those of you who watch my channel on a regular basis and have ever seen me attempt to build something, you know that I'm really bad at it. So I actually took this piece off of the part where it was because I put it in the wrong spot. So we're going to put it on later after we get everything else put back together here. So what I have to do now is put in these motherboard standoffs here, and I have to put them in from the bottom if I don't keep dropping the screws. So I'm going to do that right now. So what we're going to do here is put this one in right here. And what I have to do is get it in from the bottom. So I'm going to take this screw here and put it up the middle of that and then just tighten the standoff here. And then, of course, we'll put the motherboard on top of this and screw it down. I actually thought initially that this was too high, but this is exactly what you're supposed to do. I was watching a video that Newegg put together on how to assemble this thing, which I think I'm going to direct you to so that you don't follow my horrible practices here. So we're going to get a couple of these standoffs put in, and then we'll begin the process of getting the motherboard hopefully properly mounted. It is a smaller motherboard, so it isn't going to take up as much room on this case as a more pro-level motherboard might. So I'm going to be using these two standoffs here, and then there will be another one that will, let me line it up here, make sure I got everything in the right spot. There will be another one that should go, so these two go right here, and then there'll be another one right over here. So we'll have those three in place and one over here too. So let's get this one right here done next. So I'll put that one in there. And I'm putting this on the extras channel just because this can be like watching paint dry. And it will also be consuming a lot of gigabytes on my hard drive here as I'm recording this too. So we'll kind of let this do its thing here. I do like the fact that they give you a nice big tool set in the box here, at least this little box of screws so that you can get everything in properly. So I'm just going to get this next screw aligned up here and keep working on this. So when I'm done with all these motherboard standoffs, I will come back and get this done. Okay, so now we've got the pegs in the right spot here. So you can see these risers are all in the proper place, and the motherboard's holes will line up with it. Now this is a smaller motherboard because if I had a larger one, it would actually take up the entire length of this, but this is all lining up now perfectly. So the next step is I'm going to screw down the motherboard onto these risers so that we can have it nice and secure, and then I think we will get our CPU installed next, our Intel CPU, and get that going. So what I'm going to do now is just screw in all of these little screws here, get everything locked down and secure, and then we'll get that part mounted. We'll get the CPU on, and then we'll start looking at how we get that set of connectors here reattached. So stay with me, I'll be back in a minute. All right, so our motherboard is now firmly connected to the acrylic base here. As you can see, it looks like it will have plenty of airflow on this thing also. And what I'm going to do now is just close up the top of the CPU connector. And what happened was I thought I was recording before and I wasn't, so I'm reproducing the CPU mounting here. And I've got a lot of thermal paste on the CPU. I don't want to mess with it. So basically what you do though is drop your CPU into the slot here, and you push this little door, this little handle thing down here, and get it nice and tight. It does feel like a little bit of force that has to go into it to make it work, but that will be the case. And then I'm using the Core i3 boxed processor, and what's nice about these is that they come with the fan and heatsink already, so you don't have to go out and get all this stuff separately. I'm sure if you were overclocking this, which we're not going to be doing in this, this build here, you might want something a little more robust, but this works really well. You just snap these things in and just lock them into place, and you are good to go. So we're going to get all the rest of this thing locked down, and then we are going to continue our build here, next hooking up the power supply. All right, so this is actually turning out to be quite a disaster of a recording. I'm glad I'm putting this on the secondary channel. I keep screwing up things here with my microphones and the equipment here as I'm building it, but what I want to do before we get the power supply connector is just get the fan hooked up to the fan jumper here. So there's a little jumper right here for the CPU fan that I'm going to attach right in here, if I can get it lined up properly, and that will power the fan that will keep our CPU cool while we are using our computer here. Now what I'm going to do is just zoom out slightly, because what we're going to do next is get this power supply mounted. Now, this thing is really heavy, and I'm wondering how it's going to work with this base here, because it does add some weight. You can see it kind of giving as I'm putting it on here. So what I'm going to be doing is screwing this down from the bottom, and what will happen here is the fan will blow out this way. I think it blows, maybe the intake is down underneath, and it will blow out to the right, or vice versa. Either way, it won't be blowing any hot air on our motherboard here. I think this bend that we're getting here will get better once I get the drive mounted on the other side, which will give it more support. So it'll be a little hairy here until we get the drives hooked up, but at least we can see how the power supply will go in. And now that I think about it, I think what I might do actually is attach the drive first and just get that part over with, because it seems like it's going to probably like bend this thing in a way that you can't get back from if I don't do this part now. So what I'm going to do here is just get this drive mount here attached to this thing, and when I do that, I'll put this whole thing together, and hopefully that will give us a little bit more support for that really heavy power supply. All right, so we've got our drive mounted in the little bracket here now, and I did have to buy this 3.5 or 2.5 to 3.5 adapter to get all of this in there properly, but I'm just going to now slide this in and line it up so that we have everything in the right spot here. So I'm just going to get these little things pushed down on there, and then what you do is just get it aligned into these little pegs here. So each of those legs now push through here. Now we need to get all of that to lock in place like so, and that will give us hopefully a more rigid platform to work with here that hopefully will support the weight of this power supply. I do think this power supply is probably a little too heavy for what we've put together here, but hopefully it will hold together, and if it doesn't, we'll find out. So there we go. We've got now a pretty stable platform in which to work from, and we've got the drive mounted in there pretty securely as well, and we'll be running our SATA cables throughout there in a minute too. So let's get the power supply on here like so, and the next thing I'm going to do now is just screw it in from the bottom, and then we'll come back and continue our project. All right, so I got the power supply finally mounted on here, and this thing is really weighting down the entire case, so I'm probably going to find a smaller power supply. This one's a little too much for what we need here. The other problem I'm noticing with it, well, two things. One is that it's really hard to get it bolted down on here. I think maybe doing the motherboard last might be the best solution, just because you do have to put everything kind of on its side to get it lined up. But the other issue is that the power input is on the bottom, and there is just not enough room for my cable here. So it's going to put some tension on the cable when we have all this stuff operating here, as you can see, because it's hitting the table here. So what I'm probably going to do is get a cable that has a right or a left angle on it, a 90-degree angle on the connector, so that I can get it out from under there. So that's the biggest flaw I'm seeing with this so far, is that you probably need to get a different power connector so that you're not putting a lot of stress on this thing. So I'm going to maybe look around in my junk drawer and see if I have one of those on there. So, all right, so now we've got the power supply connected, and again, it's really weighting this thing down quite a bit, but it does feel like it is going to hold itself together pretty well. The next step here, I think, is probably going to be to get all the power connectors going and the SATA connectors and the RAM installed. So let's do the RAM next. We've got our two RAM modules here, and before I touch them, let me just reconnect my static thing to the thing here so I don't electrocute or zap my electronics here. So we're going to take out our two DDR4 RAM sticks and put those in, and hopefully everything will work when we power this up in a few minutes here. So I will get this going right there and snap that down like so. We'll get the other one out here and do the same with it and get that down on here, and we'll continue getting this whole thing built and put together here. So we'll get that RAM in there, and there we go. All right, so the RAM is installed. The next step I think I'm going to do is get some of the power connectors going. Now this is a modular power supply, which means that, let me zoom out a little bit, which means that we don't have all these unnecessary wires kicking around that we don't need. So I'm only going to connect the things that we do need. And what we have to do first is get the motherboard connected, and this is a standard ATX motherboard. So within our pouch of power connectors that came with the power supply, we have something that will connect up with that plug there. So what I'm going to do now is just untangle this thing, and we will connect these power connectors up. So what I want to do here is look on, let me zoom out one more notch here, just so you can see what I'm doing here. So I want to look for the ATX option here, which is right over here. So I'm going to connect this up on there. And there's one that goes next to it as well. So we're going to pop that in like so. And then we're going to do the same on this one here. Get that one connected. And then we're going to run this larger cable over to the motherboard input over here. And you know you're going in the right direction because there's a little tab on the end of this that will connect into this thing here. So yeah, they will not let you put these things in the wrong way. So if you are worried about that, don't be, because you cannot screw this up. Because if you do, you get a lot of smoke. And for some reason, this is not going in. And I wonder if I have it backwards. Oh, there's a separate connector here. Well, that's odd. Let's see. This back in here. There we go. Okay. Now it is connected. So we got that going. What I want to do now is there's another little jumper on the motherboard here, so it probably needs additional power. So we're going to connect up that one next. That's probably a peripheral one. So we will get that going. When we connect our GPU, we're going to need to add in some additional power connectors for that. But in the meantime, we can get this peripheral connector going here. So we're going to attach this cable over on this one here. And this, I believe, is for the PCI Express slot on the other side. And I guess I can connect any one of these to that spot. So this cable actually comes apart, so you can have them together as one unit here or break them apart. And it looks like this motherboard only supports one of these, so I'm just going to put one of these in here. It's the CPU power, and we'll be good to go there. So this one's labeled CPU, by the way, so you can see that that one goes in there. And all these power connectors will fit, so you don't have to worry about, hopefully, putting in the wrong thing in the wrong spot. All right, so we got power connected now. So now what I want to do, I'm going to put some of these things away for a second because I want to get the SATA connector going for the SSD drive. So my motherboard actually came with some connectors for the SATA drive, so we're going to run those. And the SATA connectors for the motherboard are on the side here, and that's where we're going to connect our hard drive to. So what we're going to do is connect the hard drive to SATA 1, which will be the first one in the chain there. And what I want to do here is get back underneath. I'm going to run this cable in this little cable management spot here so that I can get at it. And I'm making a mess on my desk here, so let me get these screws out of the way. All right, and by the way, I'm going to put a link to a Newegg video where they actually put this thing together the right way, so you can you can get this done the right way without me totally screwing this up. All right, so in the back of the SATA drive here is a SATA connector. So we're going to, actually, no, I'm going to do the reverse of this. It's getting a little awkward here with this thing on here. So we're going to now, I think I'm just going to use this one here. I'm going to connect up this cable to the hard drive. Hopefully it doesn't go anywhere. It snaps in very securely, and then we're going to run this cable up through here and connect it over to our SATA 1 connector here. And that will get our hard drive going. Now the hard drive needs power, which we will get from our power supply. So in my box of cables here, there should be a SATA connector that will match up with our drive, and here it is. So what I'm going to do now is connect this up with the power supply and then run the cable over to it. So we have on the top of the power supply here, let me get the thing positioned properly. We should see another SATA connector on here, so let's look for that. So it says peripheral and SATA. It might be hard for you to see there. Peripheral and SATA right here. So we're going to take the end of this cable here, which is this connector, and we're going to plug it into the peripheral and SATA connector on top of the power supply here. And then we're going to run that cable over to our hard drive. And the nice thing with working with one of these cases is you can have these cables kind of all over the place, although I think I'd like to run it underneath. So there's a little cable management option down here. I think it should be able to reach. So let's see if we can get this routed all the way down there, because this is the end that we need on the hard drive. So we're going to run this down underneath that. And with any luck, it should reach our hard drive underneath here. And it does, so I need to just make sure I got the right angle on it. Yep. Okay, just get underneath that and get it hooked up. So let's do that real quick. And hopefully it's not going to get blocked by this bar. There we go. All right, so we are connected in there. That cable is running neatly underneath there. So believe it or not, this PC is pretty much ready to go. So what I think I'm going to do now is go and clean off the desk a little bit, and I'm going to go find hopefully a angled power connector so I can get this power supply hooked up without having too much stress on it. Otherwise, what I might do is put it up on some blocks so that I can get it at least off the ground so that cable is not crunched underneath there, and I might just go out and buy a right angle power connector. So let me zoom out. Actually, I'll zoom out the camera here so you can see what this is looking like now, which looks pretty cool, I think. So it looks like it's a pretty much ready to go computer, and it's nice to just have this as a workbench here. Now, one of the things that I can do is connect up these dividers here so that we can, when we get our SATA card installed, we can have everything separated. So I'm just going to put one of these two things in here. So let's just screw these in. I guess I have to put a nut in at the bottom of these. So what happens when I put my cards in, the card will screw down onto these posts so that it stays in place, which is something we'll want to do when it's time to hook the GPU up. But because there's a little bit more work involved with that, I'm going to do that later when we do the GPU portion of this thing, but you can get a feel for how that works. Okay, so I'm going to go take a little break and get a monitor hooked up to this, and we will see if this computer boots up or goes poof. Let's hope it doesn't go poof. Let's take a look. All right, so our build is done, and what I'm going to do now is get it all hooked up. Now, the motherboard I have here, because I didn't buy an expensive one, does not have an HDMI output on it, if you can believe that. So I did have, luckily, in my collection of stuff, a DVI to HDMI connector, which I'm going to use right now to get this hooked up. I haven't used this cable in a while, so we're going to connect this over to this end here and plug the other end into the monitor. I'm going to hook this up to my network to get the Windows updates installed when appropriate, but because I don't know if this thing is going to explode or not when I apply power to it, I'm going to be very careful about it initially. So we're going to just go with the basics here. Now, I also have a Windows 10 installation on this little USB adapter here. So I'm going to always install Windows off of an Apple USB adapter. So I'm going to put that in there. That adapter, incidentally, used to come with the MacBook Air before they had other ways of recovering your partitions. So I'm going to get this connected up here. And this might be the moment of truth here, whether or not this thing explodes or works as we anticipate it will. So I'm going to just plug a little USB connector in here to get my keyboard and trackpad working. And then we will fire this sucker up and hope that it all works. Let's see. All right, so nothing exploded yet. And I'm going to hit the power button here on the end. And nothing, which means that either I have done something incorrectly or I don't have the power button mapped properly. So let me go work on that, and I will be right back when it's up and running. Bear with me. I actually forgot there was a power switch on the power supply itself, so let's see if that does it here. All right, nothing happened, but it doesn't mean it's not going to work. There we go. And it looks like we got a fan starting, and let's see, the CPU is going, and the power supply is not turning, but I'm not concerned about that because I think it's one of these smart power supplies that knows what it's doing here. And there we go. So we've got stuff on the screen here. Let me put this up on for you to see. I'm going to have a much better view of this when I get everything functional here. So I'm going to run setup now. And we'll do a little bit of setup on here. So now what I'm going to do first, and this is an important thing to note when you're getting a new computer set up, especially with the DDR4 RAM, is you want to make sure you got the right memory speed locked in. I'm not a big fan of overclocking, but I do like to make sure that my memory is configured the right way. So I'm just going to go over here, do system status, and let's see. The good news is it's seeing everything I have installed. So we've got 8 gigs of RAM. Actually, we're good. The memory here is coming in at 2133. We got the right processor here. The drive is being detected, so I think we're in good shape. What I am going to do is, yeah, so it should pick up that. Actually, it won't. Let's go move the. Let's see what happens when we boot. Let's just save and exit. Yeah, it's nice it didn't have to do anything to here. It's also nice that it didn't explode when I first plugged everything in. So let's see, see what happens now. One of the things that I love about building PCs is that you never know what's going to happen the first time you plug them in. And when they do work on the first shot, it's very exhilarating. Back in the days when I was first doing this, when I was a kid, smoke and sparks and other things were often a common occurrence here. So this was actually nice to see that we didn't end up with a catastrophe here with this computer. So what I should be seeing in a minute here is the Windows installation booting up off of the USB drive here. So hopefully that's going to happen. And then, yep, there it goes. So now we're good to go on that. So what I'm going to do now is take the time to get Windows installed on here. And then once it's installed, I'm going to start going through some of our other software installation to see how everything works. This might be kind of fun because you can see exactly how I configure computers for all the testing that I do, because I have a solid state drive that has everything I need on it, and we just install all of it in one swoop, and we're off and running here. So we're going to let Windows install, and when this is done, we will come back and do some more. All right, so it looks like Windows got installed on here without any issues. In fact, it picked up all the drivers correctly also, which really surprised me. This is kind of like a stock Intel configuration here, but no drivers that needed to be downloaded. Everything is good to go. It is doing a bunch of updates right now, of course, because it is Windows 10, and I think my installation of Windows 10 was the pre-anniversary edition. Yep, so I've got to wait for that to get down via the Ethernet connection here. But what I'm going to do now, while we're just getting all these other updates installed, is plug in this portable SSD, because this is what I use for testing everything here on the channel. So I'm going to plug this into the USB 3 slot down here, and what I'm going to do is show you how I get all that software installed on here very quickly. So I'm going to go over to my E drive real quick, and I apologize for the cables being in the way here, but when I do the main review, you won't see all this stuff. Let me get rid of this. Why is that doing that? Let me go back over here to E, and we will begin the installation. Now, what I use is a little service called Ninite. This is their free tier, and I have it install Chrome, the Java 8 runtime, so I can run Minecraft, Steam, and VLC. So I can hit one application here and just have it download everything for me. So that really makes my life a lot easier, because I get all the main stuff that I use to test installed. And then what I've also done on this little external SSD is I have a bunch of Steam games and software already on here. So after I get the Steam client installed on here, I just point it at this drive, and I've got 3D Mark and GTA 5 and all these other games that I don't have to download and restore or do anything else, because they're all sitting on here. So this is a very portable kind of application, in that I can just take this drive out, plug it into whatever system I'm testing, and it really speeds up my efficiency here on the channel. So I'm going to let this stuff install on here, and then when this is done, I think I'll probably run the 3D Mark benchmark so we can at least get a baseline for the Intel graphics on here. I'll probably do some other stuff offline, and then we will get the main review up on the channel after that. So we'll do one more take on this one once I get all this software installed, run the 3D Mark benchmark, and then look out for the main review of the bare bones i3 device here. Thanks. Hang on. All right, so we are done now with all the updates and all the other stuff. I got Steam installed, and I've got 3D Mark loaded up on here now. So we're going to do our first test of this battle station here and see how it performs. Now, I don't expect this test to run all that well, because we don't yet have the GPU going in this device yet, but we'll see now what its baseline will be for the Intel graphics. And I might run this once or twice just to make sure that I get a valid score out of it, but I'm not going to put you through all that. You can just see how it runs the first time here, and we'll just get a good idea as to how this performs. We're seeing 35 frames per second right now, which actually is better than I usually see on a machine like this. I do think having the dual channel RAM contributes to that performance we're seeing here, because this is actually less than, maybe about the same speed as I saw on that i5 machine I looked at last week from Acer when I was just running single channel. So I think it's probably a pretty good result here, good performance, and we'll let this portion of the test run. And then what it'll do after this is it'll go to a second graphics test, and then it will move on to a CPU test where we can see how it does with a physics-heavy thing, which really taxes the CPU more than the GPU, at least when you're in Intel configuration here. So we'll let this run. We're doing about, you can't see it, but we're doing about 27 frames per second on this one right now, which is pretty good. And we'll let this finish up. What's interesting is I'm not seeing the fan spin on the power supply yet. It's not getting that hot either, so I think it's just not hit the thermal threshold for it to kick on. I think the selling point on this power supply, which is more of a premium power supply, is that it's very quiet, which I can definitely say it is. In fact, this entire system is really quiet. The only fan running on it right now is the CPU fan, which is making practically zero noise, so not bad at all. All right, so that test is done, and now we'll be moving on to the physics test, and we'll see what we get for a final score on this one here. Let's see, there we go. It always starts off fast, and then it drops off really quickly after that. So yeah, now we're down to like 15, 14 frames per second, 13, yeah, about 13 frames per second. About what I expect out of an i3 processor. These are not super fast chips, so you won't get the speed you'll get out of like an i7 or something that's more of a gaming-oriented device. And our final score is, wow, 6,866. Not bad at all. If I recall, I need to look this up. I think our AMD device did better than this one. But what's interesting is the AMD APU, I'm looking it up right now, The AMD APU is more focused on GPU versus CPU performance, so that might explain why that number will be. But let me look up here what we got on that one. Let's go over to our 3D benchmark spreadsheet here, and I'll look at the CloudGate test, and we'll see what we got here. So CloudGate, I think that's what I'm looking at here. Yes, CloudGate. So our AMD machine scored 7,054. But the frame rate on the AMD machine was significantly higher. So when we look at the graphics test, that machine, the AMD machine, got 50 frames per second. This one did 36 frames per second on the same test, and the same can be said also about the second graphics test. Where this one does better is on the CPU, and that's why the score is closer than maybe it should be, because the CPU on this one is faster than the AMD CPU is. So the graphics side of the AMD is faster than the Intel graphics, but the CPU on the Intel chip is faster than the CPU on the AMD chips. All right, so I want to thank everybody for tuning in on this build video. These are not always the best ones to watch of me because I'm not very good at building things, but I think I actually got this one to a point where I can say I'm relatively proud of the work. It hasn't blown up and it hasn't fallen apart, so I think I'm going to give myself at least a B on this one. Let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. We'll probably do some more stuff on this channel when I start installing graphics cards and some other stuff on it. We'll talk to you soon. This is Lon Seidman. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporter Eric. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.